Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays with Sam, the Miracle Man. You'll join a captivating and transformational podcast where we'll explore the extraordinary journey of Sam, a man who overcame all odds to reclaim his life and health. Each Wednesday, Sam shares his inspiring stories of growth, health, and his journey to find wellness through self-care, mental well-being, and physical rejuvenation. We'll also have dynamic and interesting interviews with professionals in health, fitness, spirituality, and personal growth to help you on your journey to uncover the true secrets to living your best life. With just a click, you can subscribe. We will welcome you every week. Now here's your amazing host, Sam.
Hey, Miracle Makers. Welcome to another episode of Wellness Wednesdays. I'm your host, Sam the Miracle Man. So I hope you're feeling good and living life on your terms. This week I have a special guest, Eliana from Light Frequencies. But first we talk about this darkness that a lot of us live in, that voice that says that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy, that we're not deserving, or maybe we're feeling sad about our situation, maybe dealing with depression. All this darkness is really related to our head trash. This is the darkness, the head trash. So how do you move out of this darkness and into the light? So it's an interesting, fascinating conversation with Eliana. So here she is. Take good care.
Hello, everyone. I'm here today with a very special guest, Ellie, all the way from England. So welcome, Ellie.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so just looking at your background, I see that you're the founder of Light Frequencies. Before Light Frequencies, and we'll get to what that means later, but before Light Frequencies, how was your life? Was it dark frequencies? How was this?
Do you know what? I was actually just about to say it was dark frequencies. So you took that out of my lips, honestly. Yes, it was. It was, but it's something that really I didn't see coming. So I hadn't realized how much in a dark place I was until really things fell apart in 2012. And before Light Frequencies, I was the kind of classic Italian girl, because I was born and raised in Italy, raised by Italian parents, having a kind of ordinary life of conforming even more, because that's what the kind of average Italian family does. And so for me, who was someone that was daydreaming a lot since I was a little girl, because I was always talking to trees, talking to spirits from the other side, talking to animals. For me, being so-called grounded and being practical was a very strange concept. And obviously my parents didn't know what to do with the way I was. The children at school were bullying me 24/7, so I didn't have many friends. Let's just face it, right? I was spending time with only one friend whom I considered my best friend. And the feeling wasn't mutual because she had so many other friends, but she was the closest one I had. And yet I was feeling like I had to pretend and I had to be someone else with this friend of mine, obviously pretending to be somebody else at school and with everyone else. And this really continued on because my mom could see the turmoil inside of me. So she could see that I was really struggling, but she also had a very difficult life. So she did try her best to really give me all of her love and support and compassion. But bearing in mind that she too suffered from the same problem as me, of being kind of rejected, being the black sheep, being different, etc., etc. So there was only so much she could do. And so basically, I kind of spent the next sort of 30 to 35 years trying to really adapt, try to create for myself this kind of seemingly normal life, of really wanting to do what everybody had expected of me. So going to school, the schools that everybody approved, the university that everyone approved, the career in the city that everyone approved, the boyfriends that everyone approved, the friendships that everyone approved, so that I could be all happy about, wow, look at how well Eliana has done, right? So in the eyes of everybody, I was a so-called winner, you know? But then it all fell apart in 2012. And the way it fell apart is I became very ill. I developed a very rare form of DBT, which is a deep vein thrombosis. And that particular DBT got me in a state where I basically began suffering from depression. Well, I thought I was depressed, but looking back now, you know, I had it coming. I had it coming because I remember many years prior, I had moments when I was so happy and so much of an extrovert, and then moments when I would just happily stay home and cry hot tears for days on end. So I had it coming eventually because, you know, the illness that I had in 2012 was really the sum of all of my fears, of all of my sense of guilt, of feeling guilty to my younger self for really not having been the person that I was supposed to, feeling a lot of shame for really not living up to what I wanted to my passions, and also absorbing a lot of, you know, emotional baggage from everybody else. Because the thing about me is that I've always been very much of an empath. I've always been a very sensitive child. So one way for me to be accepted was to be the garbage, the trash can, literally. So everybody could pour all of their emotional issues onto me. But for me, it was okay, because for me, it was a way to say, I'm your friend. The fact that you are confiding in me means that you really trust me. It means that I'm really your friend. And so give me more. Not realizing that, A, I wasn't able to really resolve my emotional issues, well, face them, let alone resolving them. And B, I was picking up everybody else's emotional trash. So I got to 2012. I became so ill with this particular disease, very rare form of illness. And that's when I said, okay, everybody and everything stops. Because I asked myself one question. I said, how on earth did I get to this point? You know, because up until then, up until the December 2012, when I became really ill, I was going out all the time. I was playing sport. I was working in the city. So I thought, what did I miss, you know, in the last 30 years that caused me to become seriously ill? And that question didn't get answered for several months, because all of my friends from sport, all of my friends from social life disappeared. I was signed off from work as disabled because I couldn't move my right shoulder, my right arm. So I couldn't work. And so I was spending a lot of time alone for the very first time in my life. And so that meant thinking a lot, and I wasn't used to thinking a lot, let alone going in my heart and actually facing some of my deepest fears, right? And so I became an insomniac. I was crying all the time. And I remember the few times I got some sleep, I remember waking up in the morning sobbing. And at some point, I just decided, do you know what? No one's going to miss me anyway. And that's really when I reached the so-called darkest frequencies inside of myself, because at that point I decided that I wanted to end it, that I didn't want to stay here anymore. I wanted to take my life. So that really is what some people, maybe they describe it as the dark night of the soul. To me, it was my worst nightmare come true. So that was the before. I don't know if you have any questions at this point, because I'm conscious that I went on talking for like 20 minutes already.
Well, there's a lot in there. You know, we can always go back to, you know, how your parents dealt with you when you were talking to trees in the unseen world? Do they think you were crazy, going mad? I'm just curious of how they reacted to you and that state. And they sort of, I guess, you see with kids, maybe it's just their imaginary friend or something like that. And I was just wondering how they dealt with you in that aspect of life.
They didn't really, they weren't really scolding me. They weren't trying to talk me out of it, but they would always have this thing about trying to bring me back to what they were saying was the real reality. What I remember them saying, especially my mom, is stop daydreaming, stop dreaming of things that don't actually exist. And obviously it took me another 35 years, right, when I finally reconnected to my intuitive abilities to realize that you can't actually imagine something that doesn't exist already, right? And so, but then again, I was a kid. I was very impressionable, and I was listening to my mom, and I was listening to everyone else around me, right? And so it was something that I decided to do consciously, to really turn my back to my intuition, to my, to my ability to connect to the invisible world. Because again, my mom was saying, oh, you don't have any friends, you just have a best friend who doesn't think of you as the best friend. So, you have no social skills as such. You're an introvert, you're really shy. And you know what that does to a 6, 7, 8-year-old girl?
Mm.
It makes you very self-conscious about what you are not so much of who you are, because obviously you're being labeled over and over again, but mostly it makes you wonder, how do I get to becoming how they want me to be, how they see me as? So this is what I decided to do for the next 30 or so years. How can I possibly become this extrovert, this party animal, this, person that everyone loves, in a way that people will be attracted to me, in a way that people will not reject me. And so this is the kind of distortion that it created. And obviously, knowing my parents, especially my mom, I honestly believe that they didn't have this kind of intentions towards me, because if there's one thing I remember from being a child, luckily, is always being loved, deeply loved. But of course, as you know, parents didn't come with their own parenting manuals, and they had their own pretty difficult life. So they tried their best, and they came with their own traumas, with their own unresolved conflicts. So this is really what happened to me. And the other thing is that because I was constantly bullied by my teacher at school, by the other school kids, all the way through to high school, I was always self-conscious about how I had to behave around other people. And I was actually on a Facebook Live today in a group, and I was also saying how many of my relatives, not the closest relatives, but the more distant relatives, they always had this picture about my dad. And this is true in a sense, because they always looked at my dad's traits, the more negative traits, because my dad was, yes, he was a strong person, but he was an alcoholic, and my mom left him when I was less than 5 years old because she couldn't take it anymore. And also, he was verbally very aggressive, to the point of really insulting people if he had to. So he'll speak before even thinking and processing what he had to say. So what my distant relatives were saying to me all the time is, whenever they will see that I had these bouts of anger because I was repressing everything, right? I was never speaking my mind. The first thing they'll say to me was, be careful, you're going to end up like your dad. Right? So this is on top of me receiving the bullying from the kids, and on top of being told by my mom, stop daydreaming. Right? So basically what that did, it caused my throat chakra to be completely blocked for 30 odd years, to the point that when people would ask me, even in meetings, they will ask me, oh, Eliana, what do you think about this project? I would just feel a blush coming on. So I'll start blushing, you know, which is kind of, you know, you look at a 35, 40-year-old woman and you think, oh, hold on a minute, why is she blushing? What did I ask? I just asked for her opinion. I didn't ask, you know, what are you doing in this room? You know, I'm not singling you out because I'm thinking of you as being a bad guy. I'm only asking for your opinion. But because I was so used at suppressing everything, for me, it was like I was being called out. So I was very self-conscious about saying perhaps the wrong things in the wrong place, because God forbid what the judge and jury would have come out with, you know, what it would have judged me as. So, so yeah, I mean, it took me years to realize all of these patterns and how my behavior is shaped around these patterns. But it all really started with my illness. So I'll be forever grateful really to my body for really showing me what I had done to myself.
Right. It really sounded like you couldn't be your authentic self. You were forced to put this mask on. It just choked off who you really were. And this expressed itself through flushing, and probably had like bats of anxiety and stress. Do I measure up? Am I saying the right things? People with no self-confidence, you start doubting yourself constantly, that this continuous self-doubt. And I guess eventually you turn this around. And that's really interesting. But there's one more thing I just wanted to touch on real quick that I like to address a lot, because I consider this the biggest spiritual myth out there, the dark night of the soul. I see the soul as this radiant, bright light. It's always light. It's always sunshine. What it is, it's the mind, these mental beliefs that create this lampshade over our light. So it's really the dark night of the mind as opposed to the soul. Because people like that excuse that it's dark night of the soul. It's like, no, it's your mind that's creating that darkness. Your soul's shining bright. It's trying to lead you to your light, illuminate your path.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It is our mind really that is leading us astray. And the mind is always projecting these apocalyptic scenarios of death, destruction, Armageddon, and complete oblivion. You're absolutely right. I think, you know, for me, it was a realization to see how, with my mind, I have created not just my entire life, but also how I had manifested that particular illness in my body. Because that particular illness that I had was actually in my blood. Yes, okay, it was a subclavian DVT, so it was under my collarbone, which is a very rare one, actually. Normally people get DVTs in their arms, in their legs, especially, you know. But being an athlete, you know, playing a lot of sport, being very active, I thought, I don't see how that can even happen. In fact, when I went to see the specialists, all the specialists were saying, well, you know, do you do any sports? I said, yeah, okay. Do you do martial arts? Yes. Ah, that explains it. So if you were thrown on the mat because you do judo, and I said, no, I do karate. We do punch and kicks. We don't actually throw each other on the mat. Okay, so that's not it. Do you do rock climbing? No. Did you do anything where you had to reach up, like replacing a light bulb? And I said, oh, yeah, but just with a step ladder, and I don't really put a lot of pressure on my arms, either on my shoulders. And so the specialists were completely, you know, at a loss. They didn't know what caused it, and they couldn't give me an explanation, which obviously added even more to my frustration, to my anger. But the one thing I remember years before manifesting this illness, right? And this is why I'm saying it is interesting that it manifested in the blood, because at the intuitive level, when I connect to the body, the blood relates to the flow of life, how well your life is flowing for you, right? And it's very personal to each one of us, right? To each and every one of us. How well is flowing, how well you think your life is moving, you know, moving forward. And for years prior to 2012, I had one recurring thought, other than I need to be who everybody wants me to be. My life is not moving forward. And I could see everyone moving on with their lives. So people, I don't know, getting married and then getting divorced, and then meeting somebody else, getting married again, having children, moving together or moving country, changing jobs. Whereas I was doing the same job. I was always in these hopeless relationships with men. So I could see the trend. I could see how my life had kind of taken shape, but I couldn't see the way out. And I remember my birthday is at the end of the year. It's in December. So it was kind of critical for me, because I was getting to the end of every year thinking nothing has changed yet again. But yet this guy, this woman, such and such person, they all changed their lives in the last 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, etc., etc. So that particular idea that got formed in the mind, going back to what you were saying earlier about the mind, was key. And I can see it now, because what my body did, it did exactly what I was thinking. It delivered on a silver plate my thoughts, my beliefs. Your life is not moving forward. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Your wish is my command.
Yeah.
That was my body.
Mm-hmm.
So when it happened, obviously, it took me a while, because I had to go into the heart and I had to go into the mind to see what had buried there for years of time. So I had to do it. I had no other choice. But that's when I started realizing that all the patterns had been sitting with me for a very long time. And I thought, well, maybe, and this is when I had the realization that got me out of the spiral of feeling depressed and feeling suicidal. I thought, maybe if I got myself to this point, maybe I can get myself out of it just by entertaining different thoughts, different beliefs, just by believing that I can be different, that I can have a different life, that I can have a healthy body, and then my life is going to move forward again. And that's when I started meeting my mentors, when I started meeting my teachers, my good friends that are still friends of mine to this day, because we're like a soul family, right? Very supportive, very caring, and also very compassionate. Most of all, very compassionate, because it takes a lot. And I see this in myself now. When I see people who have been through a journey that is very similar to mine, I look at them with the eyes of unconditional love, because I can see what I've been through. So I can see their struggles, and I can see their inner turmoil. I can see the fights that they're having inside. So, yes.
Right, because this is when you start to find your own light. You're getting that awareness, that developing that awareness. This is the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. And then I guess you can say the light frequencies that eventually that you found that your light leads you to your wellness. That's why I was thinking when I saw light frequency, it's really your light, your intuitive skills that bring you to wellness. If we learn to listen to that heart, the soul, whatever you wish to call it, this intuitive part of us, it does lead us to whatever we desire. And I think most people aren't aware, like you were talking about, that your body delivers whatever you're thinking about consistently. Whatever your predominant thoughts are, the universe says, yes, we can give you more of this.
Absolutely. And the light frequencies are actually, they're not only my guides, but they're also the methods that I use. That's why I call them light frequencies. But they came in 2013 when I was sort of wanting to figure out what had happened to my body, right? Because obviously I consulted a lot of therapists in the field of Chinese medicine and many other naturopaths as well, because I wanted to get out of this state. I wanted to get well, right? But I wanted to understand what had happened that had caused me to become this ill. So one day I finally did the thing that I'd never done in my life. I decided to go in meditation, right? Never done meditation in my entire life. So I remember watching a couple of YouTube videos, and then I thought, you know what? Let's give it a shot. So I went in meditation, and this is when I saw something extraordinary. I saw a younger version of myself, like about 20, 25 years younger, right? And I saw this beautiful light coming out of her body. It wasn't even a kind of a light that you think, oh, look at the sunlight. It felt like my body of light, right? All of my passions, all of my wishes and desires, all kind of into that beautiful light. And it felt really beautiful just looking at it. And then I can see this light moving away from the body of my 20, 25-year-old or younger self. And then I see a wave pushing it back into the physical body, like a kind of a tsunami wave, really violent, almost like, no, you're not expanding. You're not getting out there, crashing it back into my physical body. And so when I saw that, I thought, okay, I think I know what happened, because obviously my energy wasn't strong enough. My intention wasn't strong enough. So I could see at the level of intention, right, at the level of the higher mental planes, what actually I had done with the years of talking myself out of being myself, of being my true self, of following my passions, and most of all, not being able to tell others, look, this is what I do. This is who I am. These are the things that I see. These are the things I hear. These are the things that I perceive. Maybe you feel different, but this is how I see them. And that's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, I didn't see it like this because I felt there was totally something wrong with me, right? But that vision was what changed everything for me. And this is why I called my techniques light frequencies and my company light frequencies, because obviously I use a lot of light and colors to work. And then obviously with more sessions in meditation, I got in touch with my guides, my light frequencies, and they started working with me because obviously, we're a team. We need help from this side and from the other side as well. So, but definitely, I mean, for me, the light has been very, very important, because even now, being the human that I am, I like every other human, from time to time, I suffer from self-doubt, because we all have challenges, right? We always upgrade, right? So self-doubt creeps in, second-guessing yourself sometimes creeps in, but I know the constant thing is that the inner knowing that no matter how much darkness, there is always light that comes through for me. Mm-hmm. So before, I didn't have that inner knowing because it was more darkness than not really around my body and around my life. After 2012, when I decided to finally say no to the rest of the world and say yes to myself, yes to my real self, that's when I started gradually building the inner strength and the inner knowing of saying, I don't care what everyone else says. I know that what I feel is right, and I know that what I think is right for me. So that's my story about the light frequencies.
Yeah. And that's the image I had too, when you saw the image of the light coming back into like constrained. That was all about you can't be your authentic self. It's the mind, once again, that contraction, pulling that light, because we're naturally glowing, if you will, or light is always shining, but that mind comes in, the dark night of the mind comes in and suppresses who we really are.
Yes, and you will not believe for how many years after my transformation, I constantly saw the mind as the enemy, right? Even when I decided that I wanted to become an intuitive life coach and help people, I still had this thing at the back of my mind of thinking, God, mind, I don't like you, right? Because you're causing more trouble than not. And then it was a few years ago that I realized, what if the mind is actually my best friend? Because I know everyone, when they talk about intuition, right, and your inner voice, they think, oh, your intuition is your best friend. It loves you unconditionally. It wants only good things for you. But honestly, so does the mind. Because to me, the mind is the sum of everything we've lived, everything we've experienced up until now. Of course, it's not necessarily just ours, right? Because it's the sum of, you know, our parents' minds, our parents' mind, our schoolmates, our school teachers, our co-workers, you name it, right? So it's a collective mind that we basically embody. But the mind, I think of the mind as having the key to what we need to step out of in order for us to step into the self that we want to embody in the next hour, tomorrow, in the next 30 days. So the mind is not the enemy for me anymore. The mind is, I wouldn't call it a best friend, put it this way, because I still have a little bit of that love and hate relationship. But I see the mind as a confidant saying, hey, look, this is what you need to pay attention to. And it's time for you to pay attention. So I'm not telling you because I want to nag you or bother you and I've got nothing better to do, but it's time for you to look at this. If you seriously want to grow into this person that you say you want to, or if you want to do this kind of coaching, or if you want to move to that country, or if you want to change jobs, whatever that might be, or if you want to find your soulmate, or I don't know, have children, this is what you need to look at, right? Because I'll keep broadcasting that to you over and over again until you decide to look back and go, okay, I'm listening now. I am ready to listen. And I'm ready to see what it is that I'm not really letting go of. So again, it's work in progress, right? For me. And being Italian, it doesn't really make it any easier, because if you've come across any Italians, we are emotional on steroids. So I think we're more emotional than any American, really, in the United States. So coming from a very traditional Italian family, our emotions, they're all over the place. So I had to deal with that too.
Yeah, and I like the way I see the mind. It's simply a tool. Usually, this tool is looking for the lack, the bad things, trying to fit in, and we just have to retrain the mind to see the good in life. That the mind has to sort of work with the body and soul, like all three have to come together to have this integration to really create this life that we desire. That we can have it all. We just have that awareness that the mind is not maybe, it's hard to say what the right word is for the mind. It's usually looking for lack, and we don't want lack because the universe will always deliver more lack. So we just got to really retrain the mind, because we're always taught the wrong way. We're always programmed the wrong way. The mind's just a very spongy tool that we can program, but I think all three have to come together for integration.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The key of my work is to work with the heart. So the first thing I do when I work with clients, I put them to work with the heart, because when you're in the space of the heart, truly in the space of the heart, this is when you start working with the mind in a way that you feel compassion for your mind. You feel that the mind is a bit more like an unruly child that needs guidance, right? That needs to be listened to, right? That needs to feel safe to express itself, because the mind at the end of the day is not something removed, it's part of us. We co-created the mind, right? And so by being in the space of the heart, you start feeling more compassion for yourself. You start being okay with so many of the things that the mind is broadcasting to you, that the images that come from your mind, the experiences that the mind is playing back over and over to you. A lot of my work is also around the inner child, because I know people cringe the moment they hear inner child, and they probably run for the hills. But to me, inner child is nothing more than really nurturing yourself and really saying to yourself from the space of the heart that it's okay to feel this way. It's okay not to be all the time strong, not to be all the time with super confident. You know, it's okay to have these vulnerabilities. It's okay to feel insecure at times. It's okay to doubt yourself. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to have grief, and it's okay to express it. Because the majority of problems, as you know, they start when we can't express what we feel, right?
Yeah.
I was actually re-listening actually, to Bruce Lipton's The Biology of the Belief, right? Because it's on Spotify, probably on other platforms as well. But he quoted a book that he read, and I can't remember the name of the author that he quoted, but basically, I'm paraphrasing it now. This particular author said the language doesn't matter if it's English or another language, is actually created so we cannot express exactly what we feel, how we feel. And I think to a certain extent that's true, right? Because sometimes no matter how much we try and express how we feel, whether we write it on pen and paper or whether we try and verbalize it, is that really going to express fully how we feel? Probably not. That's why feeling what we feel, right? Feeling safe about expressing our emotions, about sobbing, having that cry, or having that laugh, having the giggle, it is so important to move away from the limitations of our mind and move into whatever the next stage of our life is going to be. Because when we feel safe about expressing ourselves, then we feel free. You know, we don't feel anymore like we are limited by what other people are going to think or what other people expect us to behave as, or to take on a certain persona or put on a certain mask. We now feel free, but not in a way that we think, oh, I don't care what you think. Not in the aggressive way, not in the kind of resentful way, right? But in a very tolerant way for others and for ourselves as well. So that's why I like working with the heart, because when you truly fire up the heart energy, you know, your version of compassion, your version of tolerance, your version of appreciation for yourself, your version of gratitude, as you know, gratitude is so powerful, right? This is when you truly start having this two-way conversation with the mind. And so the mind loses its power over you day after day.
Right. And I think it's really important because that's repressed emotions really create those ailments. And that's probably what you went through in 2012, because you talked about there being this emotional garbage can for everyone else. And that is really important, is that we need the self-care. We need to process all this stuff. We don't process it. It just keeps building up and building up and building up. And the body reflects that. So if we go back a little bit, so when did you start did you finally heal all completely from that illness from like 2013, 2014? And what was that process like?
So it was a process of renaissance, because obviously that particular illness came also with many other physical symptoms. You know, my digestive system was really messed up completely. I was an insomniac, and I had constantly these suicidal thoughts. So at that time, I was seeing a friend of mine who was a Chinese medicine herbalist, right? Who I'd known for years, right? And so we started doing work together to rebalance the digestive system, to nourish the blood. So all the markers that the doctors had found in my blood when my disease appeared, they all disappeared within 4 to 5 months of working with this herbalist. But obviously the key problem, my DVT, was still there, which from the tests that were done by the specialist, I found out it was caused by a compression of the first rib with the collarbone. So it's a very rare, you know, mechanical failure of the body. And that's why every specialist that I saw, they were saying, oh, maybe you did this, maybe you did this, maybe you did this. And I said, look, no, you can't tick any of your boxes, because I don't fit into any of those boxes. But so I was still banging my head on the wall thinking, what has caused this compression? What has caused this DVT? So my friend basically said, look, we've done work on your digestive system, we've done work on your blood, but I can't help you. You need to open yourself up to the world of the senses, to the world of the invisible. So he gave me a few videos by some Russian clairvoyants who were claiming that they were basically healing things just with the power of the mind. So I watched a few videos and I thought, right, what are we talking about here? And then I kind of Googled these guys, and coincidentally, because at that time I didn't believe in synchronicities, I just believed in coincidences and like pure luck. Coincidentally, the following weekend, some of these acolytes were coming to London for a 2-day course, right? So I thought, why not? Let's go. Let's meet these guys. Supposedly, I leave the 2 days and I'm going to be fully healed, right? And obviously, at that time, I was still very depressed, very cynical. So I go to meet the organizer and I met all the other people there, the other students. They're all people that were very much involved in health and well-being. So here I come with all my super heavy baggages of trauma. And obviously they just looked at me, they scanned me within a space of 2 minutes. And they were very compassionate, because not one of them said, you've got that and that and that and that. It was obvious, right, that I was coming with so much trauma, but they were all larger than life. So I spent 2 days with them. And I thought, wow, this is too good to be true, right? So I came home Sunday night thinking, this is just a bunch of BS, right? And bearing in mind at that time, I was still with the ache around my shoulder. I could barely move my right arm, right? So I come back again and I'm binge watching Netflix day in and day out, even at night, because I couldn't sleep. So a few days later, I woke up and I thought, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Let's try some of those methods. Worst case, I just throw all the paperwork away. And I still have my suicide plan tucked away. So maybe I should just go with that. So I tried the methods and nothing really happened. And they were all methods that are based on visualizations with colors, with numbers, with geometric shapes, right? And that was totally new to me. So nothing happened for a few days. And then this is about sort of a week, 10 days later, I dropped something on the floor, on the kitchen floor. And I reach out and pick it up. And then it didn't occur to me. So I'm wandering around the house. And then I thought, oh my goodness, I actually reached out and picked it up with my right hand, which I hadn't done in months. So obviously this is still me not putting the 2 and 2 together, because I thought it's pure coincidence. Something is happening. So I start trying the methods again. And this is another week that goes by, and I start noticing that the stiffness disappears. So I'm regaining my mobility even more. So I thought, okay, there is definitely something with these methods about visualizing yourself, working with light, working with energy, because I hadn't felt like this in months, right? But I still wasn't very convinced. So I called them up and I said, look, I still want to know what happened to my vein. How on earth did I got myself to this state? And they said, look, try this couple of exercises. If you want to get to the root cause of it, these exercises are going to help you. So I'm doing my exercises. Nothing happens. 2 or 3 weeks later, I have a meeting with my doctor. And I said, look, I want to see a specialist that can kind of look at my mechanical thing. If there's anything torn, like a torn ligament, whatever, a tendonitis somewhere. So they send me to do the tests. And then the specialist says, look, I don't see any torn anything, but I'm still going to send you to a few sessions of physiotherapy, right? And I'm thinking, here is me rolling my eyes thinking, what a waste of time, right? So this is a month later. And so I go and see the physiotherapist, and the physiotherapist says, look, she kind of looked at me, she made me stand up, sit down, move a little bit. And she's pointing out everything that is mechanically wrong with my shoulder blade, with my arm, with my waist, everything. And then obviously she kind of tells me to do some exercises. And then she says, I'll see you in 2 weeks. So while I'm getting dressed, she's writing there her report. And she said something that I would never forget to today. She said, I think we found the cause for your DVT. because she had pointed out everything that was misaligned in my body, in my upper body, right? I still hadn't gotten to the emotional cause, which I would months later with a lot of inner work, emotional and spiritual inner work. But at least from the physical standpoint, I knew where the misalignment, where my body had delivered on a silver plate, this physical misalignment with the bones, with the ligaments and the tendons to actually cause the compression. So it hadn't come by because I was just unlucky. You see what I mean? So I finally got the answer that I wanted. And it was at that point that I started opening myself up and I said, look, Eliana, you have to rethink the way you think and see yourself on this planet, how you see your body. Your body is a lot more than just a pair of legs and a pair of arms and, you know, something that you use to hear and see things and talk. It is a lot more. It is really an agent of how you perceive your life, how you want to experience your life. And everything that you feel and think, he's just going to give it to you. So make sure you take care of your body and make sure that you look after it. And then with all the exercises, and we're going back to 3 months in the future now, 4 months in the future, actually. With the exercise, I realized I was gaining my strength back. I was back at doing my push-ups. I started signing up to the gym again. Obviously, being really mindful of movements as well, because, you know, you never know. We go to 7 months later, right, when I was fully back in shape. And I went to my doctor and I said to my doctor, I want to have another ultrasound. And obviously the doctor pushed back because I don't know how they are in the States, but over here they say, look, this is the diagnosis. That thing is not going to go away. You know, it's for life. And I said, look, I want to pay. I don't care how much it's going to be. I want to have another ultrasound. If I have to pay for it, I want to see how much progress I've made, because I knew in my heart that that thing had gone away. I knew it. I just needed to see it with my own eyes. So I go in the room with the radiologist and she starts scanning, you know, and I said, what are you looking for? I mean, if we've been here for like 10, 15 minutes, right? What are you looking for? I can't see anything. Are you sure it's the right arm? So she starts scanning my left shoulder as well. And I said, look, trust me, it's not there. Go back. So she's really pressing with this instrument, and it's quite painful, right? Because I don't know if you've ever done an ultrasound. They press on your bones and it's not very pleasant. So she said, look, you know, you may have had this. When was that? I said, it was last year. This is when I was diagnosed. Well, you may have had it, but right now all I'm seeing is a clean vein. There's nothing there. And I said, well, how is that possible? She said, well, you know, and again, she started waffling because she doesn't know either, right? And I swear, I hadn't cried in months, right? Because I'd done enough crying in the past. And finally, with all the work that I'd done on myself, I finally could see a breakthrough. So I thought I had no reason to cry. But when she said what she said, I started crying hot tears. I even started hugging her because I was so happy. Right? She had no idea what I'd done, obviously. But that, for me, that was the realization that anything is possible. Anything.
Yeah, I totally understand that. When I get rid of all my ailments like multiple sclerosis, they were just completely puzzled because it's a lifetime type thing. It doesn't go away. And there's a few of us out there that have no signs of MS anymore because there's a greater power within us, you can say, that can take care of this.
Yeah. It is a leap of courage, right? To me, it is a true leap of courage. You have to be brave, because I think it's a test of really of where your heart is. Really, if you're brave enough to face all of your worst nightmares, your worst fears, but you know that when you do, there's going to be a clear skies on the other side.
Right. Yeah, I totally understand that. For me, it was a completely different way. I found meditation, and through inner peace, I became at peace, and then everything took care of itself. I wasn't focused on healing. I was totally focused on inner peace, and that just brought me everything into alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we're starting to wrap up here a little bit here. So let's see if somebody's trying to reach out to you, you resonate with somebody like, oh, she gets it, she knows what I'm going through. So how would they reach out to you? How would they best contact you?
So they can contact me on Facebook, right? And they can reach me on Instagram as well. And then obviously my website, lightfrequencies.co.uk.
Is that on Facebook too, and Instagram is Light Frequencies as well?
So it's Eliana Light Frequencies on Instagram, and you know what? It's Eliana Barosco, so it's my first name and last name on Facebook. I know it's not. I should have put the same thing on both, but go figure.
Yeah, so if they want to reach out to you, that's great. So if you have important, so if you see somebody that's really facing something that's really difficult, really challenging, what's the parting words you would say to them?
Always believe that what you truly have in your heart, that truth that you have in your heart, I can do it. I can change. Tomorrow is going to be better. I will get there. Believe that that voice is true, is your true guidance. Never, never, never turn away from that voice that tells you that it is possible for you to change.
That's perfect.
Never doubt that voice, because that is the real beautiful, powerful, omnipotent you. You are the creator, right? And when you're in the space of the heart, oh my goodness, Superman compared to you is nothing. You are the real Superman. You are the creator, and you are so powerful when you're in a space of love. Never doubt that superpower that you have when you're in the heart. Never doubt yourself.
Right. And for people that for the heart doesn't resonate, I can also say your soul, your spirit, whatever that is that resonates with you, that I see it's really your spiritual heart, your essence.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Ellie. I really appreciate having you on.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Wellness Wednesdays with Sam, the Miracle Man. And we hope you'll continue to discover the power of resilience and the steps we can all take to create our own miracles while on our bumpy path to well-being. But just remember, be present, find clarity, and also subscribe so we can all continue to share this life-changing journey together. See you next Wednesday.